What's happening, guys? My name is Anthony, and in today's video we've got another one for you guys. This is PSGL round 5 at Hungary, and you can see from our screen that we're getting a lot of issues and not really sure what's happening with that. Ever since a recent update on F1, it's only been happening on F1. Whenever I'm in the pits or going through like a cutscene or something like that, I get encoding overloads, which is really frustrating. So I don't know how many of you guys are creators yourselves and deal with OBS, but if you do, maybe hit me up on Twitter and we can talk about it and maybe see if there is a fix for this, because it's really frustrating to have to do try and do quality fixes whilst I'm in the actual session. But speaking of the actual session, let's get into this and see exactly what happened this time round in PSGL. So we've already done a lap on the mediums, however that time that we did was an invalidated time. I decided to keep going after we invalidated just so that I can actually get that delta. Our PB was a 15.5 on the mediums. This time round we did a 16, so I knew that there was a lot of work that we needed to do on these soft compounds, and obviously there was also the added issue of people qualifying on the mediums. When it comes to Hungary, qualifying on the mediums is a very powerful strategy, which you'll see later on how that plays out for some of the other guys who did qualify on the mediums. But so far, this lap so far has been pretty standard, I would say, in terms of what I know I can do. My PB coming into this on the softs was a 14.4, which I knew was beatable by me because I've done some laps where I was on to beat it, but then I just messed up. But so yeah, I knew I could beat that 14.4, so as long as I can get as close to it or maybe even PB in the session, that was fine for me. We had a little bit of distraction with that Alpine being there, but it didn't distract us too much, luckily. And again, second sector's pretty similar to the first, just pretty standard compared to what I know I can do. And this final sector now, you really want to be careful with how you have your tires over the lap, how you go into corners, because you can easily overheat the tires going into the last sector, and in the race they're pretty much almost guaranteed to be overheating by the time that you actually finish the lap. So yeah, the Hungary is a very tough circuit in terms of how painful it is on the tires. And as we come up to our final run now, we are in P3 thanks to that 14.6 that we managed to pull off in our first soft run, but I wanted to try and improve that just so we can try our best to really just secure that P3 position. So yeah, the first corner we hit the apex a little bit more nicely, and as you can see, we've gained about 0.04 of a second coming into the second corner. Again, just sticking tight to this grey curbing without touching it, because those curbs are really lethal, they can spin you. And yeah, it's been a much better first sector. I do believe we're almost a 10th up. We're about 900ths up at this point, and we were a lot more aggressive on that corner, as you can see, and we did gain time. However, we were a little bit wide on that long right-hander, and because of that, we lost all of that time that we made up in the first sector. You know, we lost quite a bit of it, I should say, at least. And this section wasn't ideal as well. But at this point, I was just focusing on pushing so that I can try and improve this time to keep that P3 position. And then coming up to this corner now, you can see we take a little bit too much curve, and it ends up losing us a little bit of time, and we ended up sliding and going wide due to the fact that we lost grip in the tires. And I'm generally surprised that that wasn't an invalidation. So I'm not sure what happened there, but we decided to continue anyway. And because of the fact that we were still thinking about that corner, we wasn't really concentrating on our tires. We ended up losing a little bit of grip in that final corner as well, which again lost us a little bit of time. But we ended up doing that 14.4 that we wanted, and because of that, we're in P3 right now. However, we was overtaken by Matthias, who ended up getting pole with a 14.2, and we were pushed down into P4 just in front of our teammates. So yeah, I would say it's been a pretty good qualifying session, just because we didn't bottle it and we actually managed to do the times that we set out to do. Because usually I would have a time in mind and we wouldn't get anywhere close to it, and we'd probably be starting outside of the top 10. So luckily this time we actually managed to do a pretty decent quali. But we're going to be a part of the soft compound runners, which means that we're gonna have to really push on these tires, because you know, the ideal strategy is probably medium to hard, or even hard to mediums around here. You don't really want to be starting on the softs, which thank God that the Q2 tire rule is being abolished in real life, which means for F1 2022 we can actually have strategies where we can do qualifying on the softs and then start on the mediums. But yeah, anyways, let's get into this race and stop going on that tangent, and let's see what happens here. So we've got 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights for PSGL round 5 at Hungary, and lights out and away we go. And I've just made a video recently about how to get the perfect starts, and you can see we actually got a pretty good start there, actually gaining a position straight away from Napadolski. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. We did have a little bit of a collision there. I'm not sure what happened. I think maybe I just turned in without realizing that I had turned. on the first straight there, so I do apologize for that. It was just a mistake on my end, I'm pretty sure anyway, but we managed to gain a position, which is all that we could ask for at this moment of time. We're now sitting in P3, and all we need to do is just continue following Mateus here, as Dovzan actually got a pretty good start himself. You can see we're just understeering, and the reason why that we're understeering is just because I didn't really take into account how the car was going to feel in the race. I have done race practice going into this, but for some reason I just forgot about that, and I just didn't take into account the heavy fuel loads that I would actually have. And we actually got a lap plus because I didn't know how much fuel I wanted to put in the car, so we've got a lap extra of fuel, and because of that the car's going to be even heavier, and that means that we have to adjust for that, and I wasn't really doing that in terms of my braking and turning in points, so that's why we ended up getting that warning. I do believe that was our first and only warning in the entire race though. I'm pretty sure maybe we got one more, but we definitely didn't get a penalty in this race, as you'll see as we move on into the later parts of the race. But yeah, the first lap is done. We're about 5 tenths behind Mateus, and you will start to see slowly that, again, I'm just not taking the understeer into account. Like, look at this first corner here. I just didn't take the understeer into account when I was braking, and I broke as I usually would in qualifying, for example. And because of that, we were just going slightly wide at certain sections. Here's another place that I felt that we gone just a little bit too wide. And obviously we do have the dirty air of Mateus ahead of us as well. And again, I'm just not accounting for all of that. And because of that, we are losing just small bits of time here and there, and we make a pretty sizable mistake going through the end of sector 2 and sector 3. We got a little bit wide. Luckily we didn't get a warning for that. And in sector 3 again, just not taking into account that understeer, and we go wide, and this time we actually do get punished because you can see we start to lose a big chunk of time instead of just a little bit here and there. You can see now we've lost, I think, about 2 tenths in the final sector alone, and that is again because we're going wide, because we have to turn in even more. We're getting more heat into that tires, and that's causing overheating towards the end of the sector. And Hungary on the softs, as I said previously, is very painful once you've started to overheat. But moving on to lap 7 now, you can see still in P3, still trying to defend from Napadolski, but we tried to go for a switchback here, and it just didn't work out because I ended up locking up. So he's now got the move on us. He's now back in P3, and we are now back in P4, which is pretty much where we started. At this point, I don't really want Dazed to pass us. I felt as if we were quicker than Dazed in the race, so because of that I wanted to try and just keep up with the guys ahead. And going into this lap now, you can see we've got our first pitter, which is Mateus, and he's actually going for a soft hard strategy because at this point you won't be able to make it to the end on the mediums. And I actually forgot to say, but for the strategy we are actually doing a softer mediums. That's what I wanted to do going into this, so we're gonna have to try and stay out as long as we can, and as long as these tires will allow us to. And because of that, it also could potentially mean that we might be overtaken and lose a lot of time, especially to the guys behind us on the mediums. You can see that Danny is already just 2.3 seconds behind us, and by the time that Dovzan goes into the pits to cover Mateus for his softer hard strategy, you can see that Danny Cole is pretty much right behind us as well. At this point the tires were pretty much dead. I believe we had about 50, maybe even 60% tire wear, but we were just trying to push on just to try and get to the point where we can go on the mediums and be pretty decently quick throughout the rest of this race. I wasn't really expecting any safety cars for this one, which is why I was going for this strategy, because usually in PSGL, especially our tier, we don't get safety cars very often. I mean, you guys saw the Monaco video, which if you didn't, make sure to go and check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. We did Monaco without a single safety car, so safety cars aren't really something to expect in PSGL because of the quality of drivers. As you can see, Jane's now passed us as well on those mediums. Danny already passed us a while back, and because of that I decided to go into the pits to see, you know, if we can make it to the end on these mediums. I wasn't sure if we could make it from lap 11. I do believe someone said in chat that it was lap 13, but I thought at this point I'm losing too much time, I've just got to risk it. But yeah, as I was saying, no real safety cars in PSGL, so that's why I thought that the mediums would be a pretty good strategy to do, because then we could be quick. Obviously we'd lose a lot of time at the end, but if we're quick towards the beginning, then we could sort of make up that deficit. As we come up out of the pits, as you just saw, we're behind the McLaren, who luckily not that far behind him, so we can really just stick close until we can get the DRS on the next lap, which is exactly what we do. Make the move, and now we just need to try our best to catch up to All-Star here, who's on the hard tires. And at this point, this is really crucial laps that we need to be doing here, because at one half we need to try and, you know, keep the tires as safe as they can possibly be so that they can last as long. At the other side of the things, we need to really push as hard as we can. just so that we can catch up to these people and get past them. Because remember, Days pretty much on the same strategy as us, All-Star pretty much on the same strategy as us, so we've now got to overtake them on track while also getting a big enough distance to them from them once we pass them, so that we can actually make up that deficit for when our tires start to go towards the end of the race, depending on whether or not there's actually a safety car towards the end of it. But yeah, at the moment, I wouldn't say we're driving too bad. Now that we've gotten a little bit more comfortable with the car, we're not taking that understeer for granted. We are braking a little bit late, a little bit sooner than we usually would in qualifying. And especially now that we're on the mediums as well, you do want to brake just slightly earlier due to the fact that they don't have as much grip, which really did help us. And that's one thing I actually think that a lot of people don't necessarily take into account. When they're on different tires, they still use the same braking points. And I feel as if that's one of my strong points, and that's why I'm able to basically be better in the race than I am in qualifying, just because I am able to take those slight differences into account, which means that I'm not going too wide. And that's why I think that I'm just generally better at saving tires whilst also being as quick as possible as well, just because I'm taking that distance into account. But yeah, let's see how we do on this lap and see how much time we're actually gaining on the guys ahead. Taking those corners pretty well. Again, not just throwing the car in like I would in qualifying. I think we've gained about a tenth or two already on All-Star, which means that we're catching up very, very quickly. But again, as I believe it's Crofty who said this in real life, catching up is one thing, overtaking is another thing. So we do need to keep our tires in check so that we can actually make these overtakes happen very, very quickly, so that I can pass him, so that I can pass my teammate, and so that I can catch up to Nabandowski as well, because he's absolutely rapid in this race. It's crazy how much pace he has around here, and just in general as well, because remember, we're both on the same strategy. We both started on the softs, and we both moved on to the mediums. And look at how far he is already compared to us. I don't know if I'm going to zoom in, post-edit or anything like that. But you can see he's already past Days, and he's already caught up to, I believe that's Mateus in a Mercedes as well. So yeah, there's a lot of grounds that we need to catch up, because we lost a lot of time, especially on those final laps of the soft compounds of tires. But moving on now to lap 20 after all of that, you can see there's a yellow flag going on around, and we have our first safety car. Now at this point, we've been on our tires for, I want to say, around about 10 laps or so, and our tire wear is actually not as bad as I was expecting it to be after 10 laps. So because of that, I was sort of in the mindset, should I pit and go for another set of mediums and have fresh mediums, or should I stay out and go for track position? Now, as you guys might know, if you do league racing a lot, Hungary is pretty much just Monaco without the barriers around you. So you really want to focus on track position, and that's the reason why we decided not to go into the pits for this one, because our tire wear wasn't too bad, and because of that I thought that we could actually make that up with the track position. So now that we've actually finished the safety car, you can see it's lap 24, and Danny Cole, who's had a absolutely amazing race, he started on the mediums I believe, and now he's on the softs, who's in first place, and I think he started P12 or something like that. So now that we're starting behind him, I thought, okay, as long as we can use this ERS to our advantage, as long as we can use our current tire wear to our advantage, we should be able to hang on here. Hungary is a pretty difficult track to overtake once you get past the two DRS zones, which are the first and second corners. And you can see we got a decent-ish, I want to say a decent-ish safety car restart. We didn't let Jane behind us go through, which is ideal, and we're getting some clean air slowly from in front of us because Danny Cole's on the softs. Because of that, he's clearing us quite a lot, to be honest with you, and you can see now he's already about 2.2 seconds ahead of us, and we did try our best to defend from Jane, but I didn't want to lose too much time to Danny, and because of that I decided to stay on the outside line and see if I could really just hang around the outside with Jane. However, in hindsight, probably not the best decision from me, to be honest. Pretty rookie mistake, I would say, for that, because he does have soft tires, so he is going to have more grip than us, and even if we go in the inside, you know, at least we could say we've made a defensive move instead of just letting him pass. However, at this point I thought, okay, well, you know, we made that mistake, let's just try and follow him. The softs, I don't think his softs are as fresh as Danny's are at this point. Maybe they are, but I definitely feel as if we could have kept up with Jane, just because of how long it took him to actually overtake us, and the fact that he was using his ERS a lot more than us. But moving all the way on to lap 31 now, you can see we've already been overtaken by Nabadolski and Mateus on the softs, and Dozan actually had an incident. I'm not sure what happened to him, but it caused a virtual safety car. But then you can see it switched to a safety car, and that entire time I had no idea that it switched to a full safety car instead of a VSC, because I was more focused on the Delta rather than whether or not it was a VSC or a SC, just because I already saw that it said virtual. Because of that, we decided not to pit, and it was only once I passed and I saw Days go into the pits for sauce, then I realized it was a safety car, and I was kicking myself. But at the same time, there was nothing I could really do in that situation. It was a very similar situation to Hamilton at Abu Dhabi, where if I pit, then the guy behind me is just going to pass me, and if I don't pit, then the guy behind me is just going to pit, which pretty much happened with me at Days. So yeah, at this point, I've now got, I want to say about 22 lap old mediums, and I've got to survive a couple of laps with guys who are on soft compounds all around us. So you can see the safety car has already gone in, we've already restarted, and Matthias had made a mistake. We tried to go for the overtake to basically take opportunity of that mistake, but luckily for him, I should say, he has us off, so he was able to hang around the outside and use that grip to his advantage. But yeah, now we're just trying to defend for our lives here. You can see everyone around us is on the soft compounded tires. We're on 22 lap old mediums, and all we have right now is our ERS and hopefully our defensive abilities to really keep this current P5 or P4 actually at this time, because you can see that Matthias ahead of us has got a 3-second time penalty. So yeah, you can see just the lack of grip that we have compared to everybody else. And Dazed, he was making a couple of, you know, nose attempts just to let me know that he is going for the overtake. I was hoping that if he was going to go for the overtake, that he wouldn't do it in a silly location, just because we are teammates. We don't want to end up crashing into each other and getting both of us out. Even though we are mostly in it for ourselves, we still want to, you know, have a good run in the Constructors' Championship, basically, versus just the drivers. But you can see now, final lap, we go super defensive because I knew that we were gonna go for the move around us. I knew Days was going to anyway, and you saw that something happened to Danny Cole. He was in first, and then he just slowed down. And what ended up happening was, I think it was a glitch or something like that happened in the game, where for some reason the game thought that he didn't pit and he had done all those laps on the same compounds, which is terrifying to think about, because there's nothing really that can be done about that. Like, you can't really give him the win because you don't know if he would have got the win, but at the same time, you know, he's basically just been screwed over there. So it's terrible, really, and I hope that that glitch doesn't happen to anyone else, but sadly it happened to Danny at that point. And you saw a little bit of an incident there with All-Star, where he kind of pushed us off, but then he said that, you know, it wasn't necessarily that, it was just the curbs, which I do believe him, because he did look a little bit squirrely coming out of that corner that we went side by side in. And I was just a little bit frustrated at this point, because we did have a couple of incidences with a couple of other people where I felt as if they pushed me, but either way, it is what it is. And now we're just trying to defend for our lives from Kevin, who's behind us, just so that we can retain our current P5. And yeah, it's been not a bad race, but not a good one either. I definitely feel as if we could have gotten a podium out of this race had things gone our way just a little bit more. But sadly, we didn't have too bad of a pace. I wasn't as quick as Napandowski, who's on the same strategy as me. So that's something I'm gonna have to work on probably over the next couple of weeks, to try and improve my overall race pace, so that I can be battling towards the front, especially if things like this happen, where I kind of get screwed over, you know, towards the end of the race with strategies and tires and stuff like that. So yeah, anyways, that's going to be it for this video. If you did enjoy it, make sure to smash the like button, make sure to smash the subscribe button, and make sure to check out any other league racing videos that I've got currently on the screen, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.